Hello, it's Reviews Day Tuesday, and this week I am going to talk about Black Mirror Series 3. As you may know, it is an anthology series by Charlie Brooker. Its theme is technology, new technology, and the modern or near future world. The previous two series of Black Mirror were on Channel 4. It has now moved to Netflix. Series 3 was put up on Netflix last week, and Series 4 will go up on Netflix at a later date. I really loved the previous two series, so I was very much looking forward to Series 3. I feel like the best way of me reviewing it is one episode at a time, since they stand alone. Episode 1 is called Nosedive. It stars Bryce Dallas Howard as Lacey. She lives in a world in which you are constantly rated out of 5 stars by the people around you, be they friends, colleagues, neighbours, people who serve you in places, complete strangers. Everyone can see your name and your current average rating, and your current rating is very important. It affects the services you receive. People with high ratings can live in exclusive places, they get discounts. So it's a society in which being likeable is very important, but being genuine or honest is not. Lacey wants to improve her rating so that she can afford to live in a certain house, and her way to do this is to give an amazing maid of honour speech at her childhood friend's wedding, because her friend has a high rating and lots of friends with high ratings. I really enjoyed this episode. The world is very quickly introduced. You get a handle on it very quickly. It's not that different from our world. But what I loved about the episode is how, as the story progresses, it becomes increasingly obvious how messed up this world is. Bryce Dallas Howard is ridiculously good. She really carries the episode. There are 2 episodes this series, I think, which put all their weight on one character. I mean, everybody else in Nosedive is great, but they feel more like supporting characters. It's well written, considering that the plot is relatively simple. A lot happens, it's very fast paced, and it looks beautiful. The world is very aesthetically pleasing. The colours, the clothes. Yes, really good episode. Episode 2 is Playtest, which is the other one which I would say puts all its weight on one character. Cooper is an American who goes travelling to run away from his problems, more or less. He winds up in London just before returning home, meets Sonia, and finds himself through an app called Odd Jobs as a tester for a video games company. They are working on 3D graphics technology to create an immersive gaming experience. I like this episode. Cooper is a very interesting character in that he could so easily be very annoying, but I found him very likeable. It is also, I would say, the scariest episode of the series by far. It's got jump scares and it builds the tension really well. There are twists and turns. I enjoyed this episode. Episode 3 is called Shut Up and Dance. It features Kenny, who was played by Alex Lawther, and he was amazing. He is hacked and is bribed by his hackers into carrying out a series of increasingly dangerous tasks. Along the way, he meets several other people in the same predicament to him, including Hector, played by Jerome Flynn, and they end up having to work together. This one is a very tense and dark episode. It's interesting because the characters are in this position because they have done bad things. So the audience is in this weird place where you're kind of rooting for people and feeling sorry for them, but also often wondering if you should be. This wasn't one of my favourites of the series, but I would say that it is the one that I have ended up thinking about the most. So on to episode 4, which is called San Junipero. This episode stars Mackenzie Davis and Gugu Mbatha-Raw as 2 women who meet in 1987 in San Junipero. They strike up a relationship over time. I'm not sure how much I want to say about San Junipero and what it is, but the story is about their relationship and how it progresses, and we learn more about them and the world they live in as the story goes on. This was my favourite episode of the series. I was incredibly invested in Yorkie and Kelly, the 2 women. I love the concept, and this is another episode with Nosedive, which looks very beautiful. Yeah, my favourite, different, inventive, and moving. Episode 5 is called Men Against Fire. It is about a military organisation battling roaches. Roaches are people who have mutated due to a biological weapon in a previous war. The soldiers all have an implant called MASS, which they use for strategic operations. We follow a soldier called Stripe whose implant starts to glitch, and through that we and he get some revelations about the implant and the roaches. This is a good episode. It gives you a lot to think about. It wants to say a lot. I also found it very sad. A good episode. And now finally, episode 6, Hated in the Nation. This is the longest episode of the series. The other episodes are about an hour, but this one is an hour and a half, so it's kind of feature length. It stars Kelly MacDonald as DCI Peak. We meet her at a hearing where she is being questioned about a case. And then we flash back to the case a year earlier where a couple of people who have received internet hate die mysteriously. She's working with her new partner Blue, played by Faye Marseille, Nick, played by Joe Armstrong, and then later on an NCA agent played by Benedict Wong. I really love this episode. The world isn't very different to ours at all, so it hits quite close to home, and the story and the characters are very involving. Also, although the episode was a lot longer than usual, I thought it flew by and I could have quite happily watched it for much longer. Really good, high quality episode. So yeah, those are my thoughts on every episode of Series 3 of Black Mirror. My favourites were San Junipero, Nosedive and Hated in the Nation. Those are the ones where I was most invested in the story and the characters and the world. But I liked every episode. The previous two series, there has always been one or two episodes that I haven't liked as much. But this series I found to be more consistent, and I would very happily watch every episode of Series 3 again. Another thing which I found interesting was that I think all the previous series have been set in the UK, whereas this series, despite still having a predominantly British cast, had far more episodes that were US based or were kind of worldwide stories. Shut Up and Dance and Hated in the Nation were the only two stories that took place entirely in the UK. This definitely isn't a complaint, but it was a slight surprise after the previous series. Anyway, I will give Black Mirror Series 3 4.2 out of 5. Next Tuesday, I don't yet know if I'll be reviewing anything. I haven't been reading much recently, so my Crime and Punishment review is still a little way away, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But I will be back later on in the week, so I hope you have a great day, and I will see you then.